nobody's intentionally poisoning anybody, but on the other hand, you cut corners when you can't. The other thing with the food, the farm bills is the other thing with corn, of course, is the other problem with corn is high fructose corn syrup, which in the 1980s when Pepsi and Coca-Cola famously switched, before that cane sugar was being used, which was much more expensive. It tended to crystallize and get granular.
Welcome back to another episode of the Peak Performance Life podcast. Today, I am very, very excited to have Dr. Robert Lufkin on the line. He just wrote a book called Lies I Taught in Medical School: How Conventional Medicine is Making You Sicker and What You Can Do to Save Your Life. This book is based on Dr. Lufkin's experience as a professor at both UCLA and USC medical schools. And it's a riveting cautionary tale of how medicine has gotten things so wrong and continues to in several different key ways, which we'll be talking about today. Dr. Lufkins, thank you so much for joining us here today.
Oh, hey, Taylor. I'm a fan of your podcast and your work, and it's an honor and a pleasure to join you today. I'm really looking forward to it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, let's jump right into what led you, or maybe a brief history, and then what led you to writing this book?
Yeah. Well, my background is, well, first of all, I was raised, my mom happened to be a dietitian. So I was immersed in nutritional information growing up and what to eat, what not to eat. And so it's in my DNA that nutrition matters and health. The problem, of course, was that I was raised on the standard nutritional advice, which is the food pyramid and, eat a low-fat diet and margarine instead of butter, all those things, which now I believe are wrong and actually harmful. But at the time, I didn't know it. But fast forward, I was interested in health and medicine. I went to medical school, and then I stayed on as basically became a professor at large medical schools here in Southern California, where I've been ever since. And to be clear, I'm not a medical conspiracy person. I'm actually part of the problem. I represent the medical establishment. Most of my career, I've written hundreds of scientific papers, peer-reviewed papers. I've written textbooks in 15 languages. My lab received millions of dollars in funding from pharmaceutical companies and device makers, as well as the federal government. And also, as a professor, I had the honor and privilege of teaching and learning from students and young doctors in training, as well as practicing medicine. So it is a wonderful experience. And all was going well until just a few years ago, I suddenly came down with 4 chronic diseases unexpectedly. And I went to my doctors, and they prescribed 4 prescription medicines for them. And I sort of said, what about lifestyle? And they said, well, it doesn't really work. You're going to be on these medicines for the rest of your life, so get used to it. And it happened to have, at the time, young children, and I realized this wasn't going to end well. So it forced me, out of self-interest, really, to go back and look at the scientific literature. And I realized there's been a revolution in our understanding about these diseases, and indeed all the chronic diseases that we're facing now, that I wasn't aware of, and many of my colleagues were not, and still not are aware of the breakthroughs and the significance that can happen. And I began to apply these techniques to myself, and lo and behold, I was able to reverse those 4 chronic diseases. I went back to my doctors. They couldn't believe it. They thought the labs were broken. But long story short, I got off all 4 medications, and I now am spending my time getting the message out, hopefully, with this book and other ways to everyone else, so that hopefully they don't make the same mistakes that I did, and they can learn from my mistakes and live a healthier, longer life. And that was sort of the genesis of the book.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and it's such an important topic because it is something that we see. Those of us who are super into health, sometimes I'm almost afraid to go to a doctor for something because I'm like, oh, he's going to just prescribe me something, or you go to a surgeon, he's going to probably tell you need surgery, maybe. There's different things, and obviously medicine has its place in many things where it's needed, but it did always confuse me. Where I remember I had a good friend, and he had some sort of I guess they called it some some chronic thing going on as well. And he said, hold on a second, I got to go grab another Diet Coke. And I said, oh, how many Diet Cokes you drink in a day? And he said, oh, about 8 or 9 every day. And I said, did your doctor ask you about that before he prescribed you these really strong, prescription medication? No, he never asked. And it was just like, wow, it's really interesting that a lot of times they don't even ask about your diet or about your lifestyle. And it's just a very symptomatic approach is really, and that's kind of the theme. We have a lot of people on this podcast that talk more about holistic, is like, how do we get down to the root cause of the problem versus just seeing a symptom and prescribing something?
Yeah. And a lot of people say, well, wait a minute, your book is very critical of Western medicine, but you represent Western medicine. You are the problem. And I want to be clear. I like Western medicine. I still support it. And I think Western medicine has its place. In the 20th century, the pills and surgeries that were developed truly transformed our lives through public health measures, infectious disease, and just made all of us around the world largely so much better. But the problem is, and what you hinted at and what the book deals with, is in the 21st century, we're facing a tsunami, literally, of this weird collection of what are called chronic diseases. Things like obesity, diabetes, hypertension, cancer, heart disease, Alzheimer's disease, even mental illness. And these seemingly unrelated diseases are reaching epidemic proportions never before seen in history. The problem is when Western medicine applies this, the knee-jerk reaction, the same pills and surgical approaches that were so effective in the 20th century to these chronic diseases, they may, don't get me wrong, the pills and surgery may be life-saving in the short term, the acute thing, but the disturbing factor is for many of these chronic diseases, even though you can control the symptoms with the pills and surgery, they actually continue to progress. They become chronic progressive diseases and get worse and worse and worse. And they don't address the root cause. And what my book is about addressing the root cause, which is something that's accessible to all of us.
Yes. And I'm so glad to hear, we were just talking before we started the recording, that you are going to be raising money as a charity to basically give the book at cost or donate to medical students so that they can actually learn this. And hopefully the next generation of doctors really does pay attention to this, which is just absolutely incredible.
Yeah, we want to make this available or sending it out to all medical schools, initially in the United States, but we hopefully go out and we're open. It's not just medical schools, but it may be PA schools, nurse practitioner schools, technician schools, any healthcare professionals, I think, can benefit from this rethinking our framework of how we look at health, how we look at metabolic health.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure the listeners are wondering, okay, how did you, heal yourself from these chronic diseases and get off medications that you were told you were going to be on for life? What were some of the things you did differently?
Well, the amazing thing is that they fall under the heading of lifestyle. And, we've all been told, well, lifestyle is important, it's good, but the devil is in the details. There's some things that make a difference and some things don't really make a difference. So I drilled down on the things that, based on my reading of the literature, that worked, and lo and behold, they worked, and so, and furthermore, the literature supports this. I mean, the scientific literature, the peer-reviewed literature, which in my opinion is the gold standard, controlled trials have shown that these approaches work on the diseases that I talk about. And in fact, the second to the last chapter of the book, the penultimate chapter, is about longevity, actually, because if we improve our lifestyle and we decrease our risk of these chronic diseases, or even reverse some of them, as I was able to do, an interesting thing happens. We live longer, and it's longevity. But the fascinating thing that I wasn't aware of is the same lifestyle tools that I talk about in the book that are so helpful for losing weight also work for controlling high blood pressure, which, half of adults have. It also works for heart disease risk and cardiovascular disease and heart attack risk. It also works for cancer risk. And it also works for Alzheimer's disease risk. And in fact, some of the symptoms of Alzheimer's disease in controlled trials can be reversed by making these metabolic changes in lifestyle and adopting a metabolically healthy diet with things like ketosis and all. And
Right.
Perhaps most exciting of all, and unexpectedly, is these same lifestyle things actually improve psychiatric and mental health conditions.
Yeah.
And so they're all related at a basic level. And so what we're doing is we're influencing our metabolic health, our mitochondrial health, and this is foundational. And as you say, a root cause, or if not the root cause, for the inflammation, insulin resistance, and oxidative stress that drives all these chronic diseases and also drives our aging as well. So it's a wonderful thing. And, you mentioned before, well, why not just go to the doctor? I'm a doctor. I know doctors can't make me healthy. Doctors can just make me less sick. If I want to be healthy, I'm in charge of lifestyle. A doctor can't make lifestyle decisions for me. So that's an empowering message for patients, because it's suddenly a tool that we have that arguably may be more powerful than any medicine we'll ever get in our life. And it's really an exciting time.
That's right. Yep, that's absolutely right. It's such a good point. And yeah, and the thing is, you want to avoid getting on medications, because then one medication could cause a side effect. You potentially need another medication, or it can, stunt different things. So it is really important to avoid that entire cycle. And like you said, so many people are focused on weight loss. Well, it's actually the same things that cause you to lose weight are the same usually foods that lower inflammation in your body, lower your chance of getting other kind of diseases and Alzheimer's and things like that. It's a lot of times very similar. The same bad stuff that causes you to gain weight also causes all these other issues. People seem to be more motivated by losing weight, though, most of the time.
Absolutely. And even though, I changed my prescriptions and stuff, I'm not advocating that anyone stop any prescription drugs without talking to their physician. These are powerful drugs. And, if you're going to do your lifestyle changes, you may need to get your drug levels adjusted, because, adopting certain lifestyle things, your blood pressure will drop, and you may not need those blood pressure medicines, at least at the same level before. So that's I just want to put that out there as well. But it's remarkable what we can do. The other thing with the pills and surgery is that they can block the symptoms. In other words, they can make you feel better, and people may even think, well, I've got that under control, when actually these chronic diseases, many of the chronic progressive problems with them may not be controlled with a particular drug. So I'm not saying not take the drugs, but I'm saying definitely look at lifestyle, and you may need less drugs, and you may not need drugs at all.
Interesting. And so the name of the book is Lies I Taught in Medical School. People probably want to know, what are these lies? What are some of the things that you taught that maybe you, looking back now, you would be teaching differently?
Yeah, I mean, some of the things one of the big lies is each chapter is laid out with a different type of disease, one of these chronic diseases, and then it focuses on a lie about that disease and talks about how we can do it. One of the big lies that I used to believe, and sadly, my colleagues still tell this, and this is the current recommendation for people who are overweight, is that if you want to lose weight, just exercise more and eat less. And we've all seen how well that's working, right? Most Americans, most adults are either overweight or obese, and we've never seen that before in the history of the world. And the problem is, well, first of all, exercise. Exercise is one of the healthiest things we can do. It has many, many health benefits. Sadly, though, weight loss is not one of them, for the simple reason that exercise stimulates our hunger. We all know the expression work up an appetite. How do you do that? Well, you go and exercise. And it's very difficult to exercise enough to equal the calories. A muffin from Starbucks is 500 calories. Well, to exercise that much, I need to run for an hour. So exercise doesn't work. The other problem is what I believe is an oversimplistic notion that all calories are equal and we just need to eat less of them. And that goes in the face of what we know now about biology. And your audience, I'm sure, knows the three main macronutrients, the essential ones, fat and protein. We need those, otherwise we die. And then the unessential ones, which we don't need at all in our diet, are carbohydrates. And carbohydrates primarily stimulate a hormone called insulin that has many, many effects. But one of the effects is that it tells the body to store fat. So, and the macronutrients, protein and fat, have much less of effect on insulin. So if you think about that, if I eat a diet that's high in carbohydrates, I'm going to gain weight. And, farmers know this. They fatten up their livestock with carbohydrates. They don't feed them fat or protein. So if I take 100 calories of food in, let's say, potato chips, that will signal my insulin to store fat and store the energy. So I'll be hungry still because I haven't gotten the energy I want. So I'll eat the whole bag, just like most of us, But if I eat 100 calories of a hard-boiled egg, which is primarily fat and protein, which doesn't have the effect on insulin, I can't remember the last time I've ever eaten the whole dozen eggs afterwards. I'm pretty much satisfied with it.
Yep, 100%. And it's interesting. Actually, recently, I was already kind of always pretty low carb, like eating under 100 grams of carbs per day. Recently, I've gone even lower, not even because I'm trying to do any particular diet. I just feel better. So I'll have some raw organic honey with my 5 organic pasture raised eggs for lunch that I usually have. And that'll probably be the extent of most of my carbs, other than some that I'll naturally get through some, if I eat a salad with some protein or something like that. But I've really stepped up my protein intake and lowered my carbohydrate intake. And I've lost weight without even that being the goal, or without even really trying. And we did have a previous guest, Dr. Ted Naiman, who talks about his satiety index per calorie. And the long story short is protein is very satiating. And if you can prioritize protein, you'll be more satiated. Like you said, you eat carbohydrates, you're still hungry, you eat more. And that's why a calorie doesn't equal a calorie. And the whole calorie counting debate, can sometimes get tedious, but it's like a calorie does not equal a calorie. A calorie of, again, like you said, if you eat a big steak, you're not hungry after for usually for many hours, right? You eat a bag of chips, you're hungry again 30 minutes later, maybe.
Yeah, I'd love to give a shout out to 2 companies that I have no sponsorship with, but your audience has probably talked about continuous glucose monitors, which is a thing you can put on your arm and then read out on your smartphone that literally the spikes in glucose from each of those macronutrients. So you can tell how your body responds individually to foods, because sometimes we all respond a little bit differently to things. And it used to be up until a couple of weeks ago, that these were only available. You couldn't get those without a doctor's order. And it was a big deal because a lot of doctors said, hey, no, you don't, I don't want my patients doing that. Well, that's all gone for the first time in the history of the United States. Now, these are available over the counter from both Dexcom as something called Stella that, that you can order it from their website, or Abbott makes Lingo that is a similar type device. They're fairly inexpensive. They're about half the price of the prescription one. So anyone who's interested in their metabolic health and want to do a deeper dive, I really encourage, wear a glucose monitor, just try it, and it's like an engine gauge on your metabolic engine,
Yes. And I did wear one for a little while as well, just to kind of see which things spike me more than others. And it's certainly very, very interesting. Yeah, I know there used to be a couple companies for the last couple of years that you had to go through, and they weren't even available in every state. But I did just hear, so is that right now? You can pretty much go into your local CVS or Walgreens and anyone can get a CGM now?
Actually, no, they're not available in Walgreens, but they hopefully will be soon. You have to mail them from the website. I've got both of them arrived. I'm wearing a Stella, and they use actually Amazon to fulfill them, so that's pretty fast. So you can order from either Dexcom or just Google Stella or Lingo. This is the Lingo one I just got. I'm going to be putting that on as soon as my Stella wears out, or overlap a little bit so I can check them both against each other. But it's
Nice.
a lot of fun, and it's feedback about how different people react to food. Some people think, well, oatmeal's healthy, right? I eat that for breakfast. They put on a CGM and they see what happens to their glucose. They're not eating oatmeal anymore.
That's right. And I saw actually one of the companies, Levels Health, that was doing CGMs, who I got my CGM through about a year ago or something like that. They literally put out an article because it's like this thing for some reason. Again, that's maybe a lie a doctor told people, but I've heard a lot of doctors say, oatmeal for breakfast, it's good. It'll lower your cholesterol, or you need the fiber or something, whatever it is. Well, Levels did show that over 70% of their people who ate oatmeal had massive spikes in their blood sugar. So that's important to consider as well. That's a tricky one. A lot of people still say oatmeal, oh, you need the fiber, it's going to lower your cholesterol, all that kind of stuff. What do you say to people who still take that old fashioned approach, or people say, oh, whole grains, isn't that still good? I was always taught whole grains are good, aren't they?
Great question. Let me unpack it a little bit. First of all, fiber, I think, is healthy. And
Sure.
in my opinion, not so much for my health, but for the other organism that lives in me that will, when I die, will still live on and grow. And that's my gut microbiome, the immortal part of me that continues. Well, the gut microbiome digests and processes fiber, so it's very, very healthy for them. So I think fiber is important. Fiber has other effects, like you mentioned, slowing the absorption of some of the harmful macronutrients like sugar spikes. If you eat it with a bunch of fiber, you can mediate that or palliate that effect, so it's less. That's why eating an apple is much healthier than eating applesauce, which is much healthier than eating apple juice, because we remove more and more of the fiber until apple juice is the worst thing. It's pure sugar, and there's no fiber to delay the absorption. So fiber, I'm on board.
Yep.
Grains, on the other hand, I have a problem with. I don't have a disease called celiac disease, which is insensitivity to a specific protein called gluten. But I believe that gluten and other proteins found in grains trigger a low-grade inflammatory response in many people that they may not even be aware of. And it may manifest as irritable bowel disease or migraine headaches or polycystic ovaries, or indeed any of the chronic diseases that we've already mentioned, and driving our metabolic disease. And so for that reason, I don't recommend grains, even whole grains. And And if that's not enough of a reason, if you live in the United States, most of your grains are soaked in a weed killer called glyphosate, which is outlawed in over 30 other countries because of its risk for cancer. And finally, grains are usually high in carbohydrates, which means it's that food group that spikes the insulin again. So short answer is no, I don't eat grains. Although I love baked goods and everything like that, donuts, I love it, but I love my children more, and it's worth the trade-off to see them grow up.
That's right. That's right. I heard you say that in one of your videos as well. And that's actually my ultimate goal is, if me, my wife, and my two daughters, and, can all live to 100 years old, a happy, healthy life, like that's the ultimate goal. I want to see my great grandchildren. That's one of my goals, and I think in order to do that, you do have to prioritize your health. And it's just, I see so many people that just aren't prioritizing their health until after the fact, until it's, maybe too late in some cases. So yeah, really, really, this would be great if more doctors can start asking these questions and not pushing, but informing their patients of the different ways that they can kind of help get to the root cause of these diseases. So I think this is just amazing.
Yeah, and if I can follow on with that thought, one of the wake-up calls in this book and writing this book was realizing that these chronic diseases don't begin when the doctor diagnoses them. In other words, if I wait until the doctor says, "Oh, you have prediabetes," or you have hypertension, or you have Alzheimer's, you can't remember your keys or whatever, or miss an opportunity for treatment and prevention, because these diseases actually begin years to decades before the doctor diagnoses them. And it's just the way our healthcare system's set up. If by the time the doctor diagnoses it, you've already had this for 20 years. And that includes things like cancer as well. And so the opportunity for us is with lifestyle. We can start lifestyle now before we have these chronic diseases. And, I have a friend who says, hey, I'm 70 years old. I don't take any medicines. My doctor says all my labs are perfect. I'm healthy as a, whatever, pick your animal. But what he doesn't realize is that, his marker for diabetes, his hemoglobin A1C, is just below the level for prediabetes. So technically it's still normal, but it's been creeping up for the last 2 decades. And his blood pressure, it's still in the normal range, but it's been going higher and higher and higher and like that. And maybe the inflammation in his brain, he could still remember his keys and his wife, but he's still not as sharp as he was before. So we need, it's prevention, but it's not even prevention. It's catching these diseases earlier. And that's what these lifestyle things can do. When you start living this healthy lifestyle, you're dialing back your risk for all these chronic diseases.
Yeah, absolutely. I could not agree more. And we've given people sort of an idea of like, hey, lower carb is better, removing grains is good. I do want to kind of close the loop on your ideas or what you ate to change, how you change your eating habits and what changed there. I'm sure people want to hear about that. And then after that, I do want to make sure we remember to touch on just the different incentives that are kind of backwards within our entire system here that we may want to take a look at in the future. But yeah, let's kind of close the loop on, you've mentioned low carb is better. What does that mean for you? Are you typically, what kind of carbohydrate intake are you typically doing every day? Or what are some of the dietary changes you made?
Yeah, the dietary changes. First of all, the simple thing is being raised with a dietitian, I was given the common advice that, eat frequently, many snacks, 6 small meals a day, which is what I did. And I now realize that's harmful. We need to get our gut a rest. Any food in the gut drives inflammation just by the nature of, foreign matter in our body. So we want to narrow the eating window. And there are other reasons why we want to do that. So first thing I did is I stopped eating after dinner. So I brushed my teeth right away, no more snacking at night. Then no more between meal snacks. And then eventually for me, went whole hog in it. I began skipping breakfast and then eventually skipped lunch. And now I have one meal a day when my kids get home from get off the bus from school, and we, have a meal like that. So that in itself, without changing what you eat, if you just change when you eat, you can get many health benefits. But what I eat, it boils down to three things. You mentioned low carb, which avoid carbohydrates and refined sugars, certainly, but things like starches. A bowl of rice is like a bowl of sugar, because it's converted to glucose immediately in your mouth. Rice, flour, those kinds of things. So carbohydrates is the first thing. The second thing is something that I wasn't really aware of before, and that's industrial oils. They're called seed oils. They're, vegetable oil, canola oil. They're made from specifically the seed of the grain, and these are pro-inflammatory. And also, when they're heated, they break down into toxic compounds. And as of 1990, every frying machine on earth switched from healthy beef tallow, which is stable at high temperature, to these seed oils, which is much, much cheaper because they're subsidized by the Farm Bill and the government. But they're unstable at high heat. So now fryers all over the world now use vegetable oils, which are harmful. They're also in salad dressings, and every junk food practically has vegetable oils in them. So that's the other thing. And then the last thing we already talked about was grains, both whole grains, any kind of grains.
Yep. And by the way, I don't know if you heard my backstory, but about in 2013, I had so much pain and inflammation in my fingers, hands, and arms. And by going on eventually I finally realized, after going to all these different doctors and getting all these different diagnoses and staying up late buying every pain relief device, I finally realized, okay, inflammation comes from what I put inside my body. And so I started looking up low inflammatory diets and came across the paleo diet, and have basically been paleo, kind of lower carb, since then. Then I've heard a lot about the benefits of keto, and now I would say I'm kind of like a paleo keto-ish, not really like a super strict. But I think you actually give a really good hack there as well, is brushing your teeth after dinner. I find that I do that as well sometimes, and I'm like, okay, I want to make sure I don't snack tonight. Let me brush my teeth right now. And then when I do that, you don't want to eat and mess that up. So that's a kind of a cool hack there. Eating once a day might sound tough for a lot of people. In fact, I would admit that would be very tough for me as well, especially since I'm training quite a bit, either playing pickleball or lifting weights pretty much every day. And I will also say, for people who hear that, that's not something I don't think most people can do overnight. If they're eating carbs and not metabolically flexible, and then all of a sudden they try to go eat one meal a day, it takes some time to become a little more metabolically flexible, which means kind of lowering that carbohydrate intake, having more proteins and fats, and getting a little more flexible there. And then maybe you start by skipping breakfast and kind of work your way up. What do you think about that?
Yeah. Great point, Taylor. And to be clear, you don't have to eat one meal a day to be healthy. That's me, the biohacker in me. I'm trying different things. Yep. I'm trying things so you don't have to,
Yeah.
But yeah, absolutely. And I just I want to get you on my podcast so we can spend an hour talking about you instead of talking about me all the time. So we'll make that happen soon.
Absolutely. Happy to. Would love to. So yeah, let's talk about some of the incentives. You kind of mentioned it a little bit, but what's the problem with, like you even mentioned there's certain incentives we know to farmers. There's really kind of seems super, super backwards incentives. Can you talk a little about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's built-in institution, and I'm talking about the U.S., but similar things apply around the world. But I'm most familiar with the U.S. government. There are a lot of farm incentives that have a long history for social, economic reasons. I mean, there's even tobacco subsidies today. Which go figure that one out. But the big ones are corn, soybean. I mean, corn makes canola oil, which is a seed oil made from corn. It also makes, it's high omega-6, which is fed to meat and our produce, so that even the chickens and the beef and pork, whatever we eat, has high omega-6 also, which is, pro-inflammatory. So that trickles all the way down. And then the other side of it, the subsidies mean that corn oil is cheaper than beef tallow or these other things. So it's actually, people put it in their restaurants, use it not because they want to make us unhealthy, but because it saves money. And the number one, rule of the restaurant is not to make you healthy, it's to stay in business. And
Right.
nobody's intentionally poisoning anybody, but on the other hand, you cut corners when you can't. The other thing with the food, the farm bills, is the other thing with corn, of course, is the other problem with corn is high fructose corn syrup, which in the 1980s, when Pepsi and Coca-Cola famously switched. Before that, cane sugar was being used, which was much more expensive. It tended to crystallize and get granular. High fructose corn syrup came along, and suddenly everyone was using it in all the drinks, all the sodas, all the junk food, because one, it has a long shelf life, it doesn't crystallize, and two, it's cheap. It's much cheaper than cane sugar because we're paying for it with our tax dollars. It's subsidized. So that's one of the reasons that, we always hear, well, it's expensive to eat healthy. Why is that? Well, it's because junk food is subsidized. All our taxes pay for, these bills that lower the cost of the farm products that go into junk foods. So it's a complicated problem with really perverse financial incentives.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I heard that I think it was in Dr. Mark Hyman's book Food Fix about 10% of Coca-Cola's U.S. revenues come from food stamps. So then we're subsidizing as well and poisoning the people that we're supposed to be trying to help the most there as well. And then so if you were, I don't know what the name of the position is, but if you were in charge of the incentives for farming, what would you kind of change? What kind of incentives would you change?
Well, I would look closely, and I don't know enough about it right now to say stop them all. But I would look closely at incentives that drive down the price of corn, and because of its effect on canola oil, industrial seed oils, and its effect on high fructose corn syrup. I would also look at soybean subsidies for the same reason. Soybeans are soybean oil is another one of those pro-inflammatory seed oils. It's very inexpensive because we're already paying for it with our taxes. So I would look closely at lowering those, and even there's a new movement now, or relatively new. People ask, hey, what's healthier than organic food? Well, actually, regenerative food is much more healthy. And that's the notion, whether it's plant farming or livestock farming, is regeneratively returning nutrients to the soil and growing if it's livestock, don't feed them soybeans and corn, which most livestock is fed on, but let them eat grass, and which is a healthier, less inflammatory thing. Because if we eat meat, whatever they consume, those ratios of fats in their body get transmitted to us. So it's just like eating seed oils if you eat an animal that's fed seed oils. So there are all sorts of downstream effects there.
That's right. That's right. And that's probably why, would you agree, you try to eat grass-fed, grass-finished meat when you're eating, because you don't want these, again, if they're feeding GMO corn to and again, from what I heard, it's like 90% of non-organic corn is GMO, right? And now they've been raised to be able to withstand very high pesticide spraying. So now you're getting extra dose of pesticide with the GMO, who knows what the health effects of the GMO are or not, but we know the heavy pesticides is definitely bad. So yeah, it's really, really unfortunate. So hopefully there will be some changes there and things will change. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the whole regenerative farming thing is I'm very optimistic about, very hopeful about, because it actually makes the environment better. Current farming doesn't make the environment better. This actually makes the environment better because, livestock production has gotten, a really bad name. The economists keep saying that, the number one cause of, or a significant cause of global warming is cow cow farts or methane, and I have to wonder, 150 years ago, there were 60 million bison all over the United States. And now there's, maybe 70, 80 million cows, and suddenly the environment's falling apart from the cows. It doesn't really make sense that,
Right.
this may be a more nuanced story. But anyway, I'm hopeful about regenerative farming as something that everybody can get behind and will really have a benefit on our health.
Yeah, and the regenerative farming practices actually, help our environment by helping capture, some of that carbon with the healthy soil, right? I think it was Kiss the Ground was the documentary I think I saw about that, and I'm sure there's many others as well. But it was very interesting to learn about that and how modern farming practices are really decimating the soil and the nutrients in our soil and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, you try and eat healthy with vegetables, but if they're grown from soil that's depleted with macronutrients, the asparagus that we get today, if it's farmed like most asparagus is farmed, it's not the same asparagus that our great grandparents ate, and all the many of the health benefits will not be available because of the current farming practices.
Yep. Well, yeah, this has been absolutely great. I do want to kind of wrap up on your going back to your book, Lies I Taught in Medical School. So we kind of talked a little bit about what people will learn. What else can we tell people who might be interested? I know you're giving away the first chapter for free, so people can listen to the audiobook or PDF of chapter 1 for free if you want to let people know where they can find that as well.
Sure. Yeah. That you can download and check out the book before if you like it, before you spend the money to buy it or take a trip to your library to read it. Go to my website, which is robertlufkinmd.com, and just click on the link there for Lies, and you can download that. Also, I'm active on social media. Please say hi.
Great. Excellent. And so what now is it for, it's not just for medical students, right? This is for everyone, right?
Oh yeah. I mean, I used to write books for doctors and medical students and textbooks, and this book is aimed for, it's aimed for everyday people. It's heavily illustrated with diagrams and me with my dog and different things like that, and so it's designed to be very, very readable. And although it goes into technical details, hopefully we explain them with enough illustrations. It doesn't go that deep. But on the other hand, being the scientist that I am, I reference anytime I make a claim, because these are not my ideas. This is just my interpretation of other people who've done the primary research. But anytime I make a claim or something, I try to reference the original peer-reviewed article at the end of the book, mercifully, not in the middle, but so that if you're curious, you want to learn it yourself. And I encourage people to go to those original articles if you're interested. Or if you want to take this book and hand it to your doctor and say, hey, what do you think of this? They can go and see the articles that influence my thinking, and they can look at them critically and analyze those rather than just, well, who's Rob Lufkin,
Yep. Real quick, I was just thinking too, we mentioned before about how people are doing non-fat. Let's say you're looking at maybe milk is not the best example, but someone who buys a 0% skim milk, non-fat milk or whatever versus a whole milk. Which one do you think is better and why?
Well, that's a great question. That was my world, believe me, with my mom, the dietitian, and everything was low fat yogurt, low fat, everything, low fat milk. And the problem is, there are only these 3 macronutrients. And when you lower the fat, usually in most cases, you don't really change the protein level. So when you lower the fat, you increase the sugar to make up for it. So low-fat yogurt is code for high-sugar yogurt. Low-fat skim milk is code for high high sugar milk. So I actually avoid low fat. It's it's just high. And the yogurt I eat is high fat, Greek yogurt, unflavored, because flavoring is just sugar and crap like that, stuff like that. Excuse me. And if I want flavor in it, I'll add some nuts, some coconuts, or maybe a couple blueberries. But I'm not going to pour sugar and syrup on it like I would get. So just get the unflavored whole yogurt.
Yeah. And I think a key point is that people really need to start looking at labels. When you see something, turn it around, look at the back, how much sugar is in there, especially added sugar, how many carbs are in there. Are there seed oils in there? Right. I'm like a label detective looking for seed oils and sugars and all sorts of other stuff that I don't want in my stuff. And I think the more that people can become label detectives, the more they will, because a lot of times you don't realize it, right? Like, I think if you go to the grocery store, especially if it's not just a regular grocery store, almost all of the salad dressings have seed oil in them. Right. Yep. It's like we even managed to figure out a way to ruin salad dressing, right? To ruin a salad. So
yeah,
it's
hummus.
Really
I think hummus is healthy, and you go to the restaurant and I go, I'd like olive oil on my salad. Do you guys serve olive oil? And we go, yeah, of course. It's 100% pure olive oil. And I go, can I see the bottle? And they bring it out and it says 100% extra virgin olive oil, 90% canola oil on the ingredients below, which is, Or I asked for butter. I said, can I have butter? This isn't margarine, is it? And they go, no, we only serve butter at this restaurant. So I said, can I see the package? And I bring it out. It's butter that's 50% mixed in with margarine and canola. They're not trying to poison me, although that's the effect of it. They're saving money because the olive oil with canola oil is cheaper than pure olive oil. And the butter with, the additives is cheaper than pure butter, but totally you've got to read the labels.
Yep. Read the labels, ask at the restaurants. I know I'm the annoying guy that the waiters probably can't stand, but you know what? And also really to be healthy, it's easier to not eat out as much. I hate to say that, but some people like the convenience of eating out, but it's just so hard to keep the bad stuff out. And I can just feel such a huge difference when I eat at home versus, eating out, unless it's a very specific healthy restaurant. But Dr. Lufkin, this has been absolutely amazing. You mentioned your website, robertlufkinmd.com. And then what about your social media handles? Do people just look up Robert Lufkin MD?
They're all the same, Robert Lufkin MD. Twitter, YouTube, LinkedIn. I think you mentioned them. We even started on Twitch. We'll see how that goes. I'm not a big gamer, but I know about Twitch. So
Amazing. Well, yeah, this has been great. I'm really so happy about your book and especially putting it in the hands of medical professionals and hopefully changing the way the new generation of doctors comes up and gives advice. So thank you so much for everything you're doing, and I hope we can do it again soon.
Thanks, Taylor. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed the episode, can you please leave us a rating or review and subscribe? I've realized that while we have actually increased our downloads a lot, we're actually getting a lot of downloads, which I'm really happy about. We actually have very few ratings. And I realized that I've never asked people really to rate much. So I'm asking you now if you could please rate and review and subscribe. And if you enjoyed the episode, please forward it along to anyone that you think will get value out of this. Also, if you haven't checked out our line of products at buypeakperformance.com, you get 20% off your first order. That's www.buypeakperformance.com. We have some incredible products, including our organic high-altitude coffee. If you don't know this, coffee is one of the most heavily sprayed with pesticides out of any crop. So it's really important that you drink organic coffee. We've gone above and beyond to source what we believe is the highest quality and healthiest organic coffee in the world. We're also famous for our organic green superfood powder. You can get 20% off of that as well at buypeakperformance.com. We also have an organic, vegan, and paleo plant protein. See, most of the vegan proteins out there are using brown rice protein, which is really not a good source of protein, and it's also a grain. And if you're paleo, you know that grains tend to cause inflammation in some cases for some people. And so we wanted to make one that was paleo friendly and vegan and organic. We made an amazing amino acid profile, so it's really one of the best plant proteins for muscle building. So you can check out Peak Performance Organic Plant Protein. You can find that on our website. Of course, all our products are on Amazon as well. So thanks again. And again, please, if you enjoyed the episode, please forward it along to someone who you feel can get value out of it. And please leave us a rating, review, and subscribe. Thank you.